And I feel honestly very lucky that I get to ask this incredible panel of people all the questions that I want to ask them. And hopefully those will be interesting questions for you too. So today we have Carlos, who's the managing partner at Valor, one of the pioneers in venture capital in Latin America, investing both here in the US and globally. We have Maren, who's the head of Latin America for Meta, so she helps Latin American brands work with Meta tools, and both kind of Meta as a platform, but also their AI tools for businesses here in the region. We have Tallis, who is the founder of Educação, Brazil's largest platform for corporate solutions for SMBs, with over 75,000 businesses on his platform. And finally, we have Mateus, who is the founder and CEO of Enter, one of the fastest growing AI native companies in the region, helping large enterprises, a lot of the blue chip names, some here in the room, to revolutionize how they deal with legal issues in-house. And over the past 2 years, I think everyone here in this room has followed the rate at which AI has progressed, which is something unprecedented in the history of technology. But here in Latin America, I think we tend to focus less on the evolution of the technology itself, but how that technology is actually being adopted, being built, and it's reaching people, and it's transforming into productivity and economic gains, and really what that means for us as a country and a region to position ourselves globally as a partner in this kind of new AI-driven economy. So I will try to make the most of our 45 minutes here together, and what we're going to cover today will be first how AI is being built and adopted in the region. Second, how we build secure, reliable, trustworthy AI, and what is the role of regulation in that. And finally, how Brazil and Latin America can position themselves to be a true partner globally for this new economy. So let me stop talking and pass it over to the very interesting people that are here today. And maybe, Maren, I'll start with you. I think something that you've talked a lot about has been the conversational mindset for companies in Latin America and how that's driving adoption. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what the role of conversation is in the region as we think about consumers and SMBs adopting this new technology and how that differs from the rest of the world.
Sure. So let me take a quick step back, because I think AI, when people think about AI and tech, there are just so many ways that this conversation could go. And when I look at this from Meta's perspective, what I think about is a couple of ways that we're using AI today. So on one hand, it's very much a B2B. It's how we enable businesses to become much more efficient using AI tools on our platform. And those are the algorithms that are very common already on Meta, the feed, et cetera, and primarily how we use AI to better the returns that businesses are getting when they're investing in their ROI on our ads platform. So that's one critical way. And the other way that we're seeing it a lot is really in B2C. So everything from how creators are using AI today, that's the Gen AI conversation that you see a lot around it, how they create, how they develop content, et cetera. And then finally, tools like simultaneous translation, or even the Ray-Ban Metas that we actually just launched in Mexico and in Brazil this last month, which also have AI components. And so we have a broad spectrum of how we think about AI and the platforms and tools that we have today. When it comes to conversation, I actually also, my other hat is the global go-to-market for WhatsApp. And WhatsApp is a favorite across Latin America, and especially in Brazil. The engagement is phenomenal. WhatsApp as a platform today has over 3 billion monthly active users. We see 1 billion conversations today happening on WhatsApp globally, and you can just imagine that engagement here in Brazil. We like to say that, we joke and we say that, everybody but babies really are on WhatsApp in Brazil because everyone is using it. And when I think about WhatsApp and AI, really the evolution that we've had is phenomenal, because it is a platform where started, I think, as conversation and has quickly grown to be a platform upon which businesses are building today. And so in Brazil, I think we have some of the most sophisticated use cases of businesses that are leveraging WhatsApp to reach customers. The FinServe vertical is incredibly strong. The things that Itaú is doing with their own WhatsApp internal team to reduce call center costs, to boost engagement, bill payment reminders. There is a company called a digital checking account company called Magi that is completely on WhatsApp. And the real difference that I am seeing with the arrival of AI is that even about a year or so ago, if you wanted to run a conversational commerce, let's say, process on WhatsApp, you were developing bots that were very much like decision trees, right? It was A or B, A or B. And so you can imagine just the development that it takes. It's very sticky, it's not as friendly. And now we're in a moment where we're using natural language modeling, and it's a fluid conversation between an AI agent and a person. And that opens up all kinds of possibilities, slang, how people really talk, right? You don't have to do static drop-down menus. And it is, to me, revolutionizing how business can even do more on a platform that is so ubiquitous, such as WhatsApp. And so I'm just incredibly excited to see this happening all around the world, quite frankly, from India to the Middle East, et cetera. But certainly in Brazil, I think because it started out so conversational, it is certainly the most sophisticated market that we are seeing today.
And if I can ask a follow-up to that, I think Carlos and I are kind of lucky in our jobs as investors that we get to see a lot of these companies that are reinventing business models on top of WhatsApp very early on. And I think a concern that we hear very often is kind of, well, I'm building my entire business on top of a new platform. So this platform dependency conversation has been one that comes up as these new businesses arise. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you think about that platform dependency and how Meta is supporting that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And what would you advise, founders and builders who are leveraging WhatsApp as their primary platform?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so broad. I certainly see companies that are using WhatsApp as a complement to their channels. And so you have large companies like, let's say, a Magazine Luiza, one of the largest retailer marketplaces here in Brazil. And they have their own website, they have their own app, but they use WhatsApp as a very strong complement. And they just launched a new AI-founded process with Lu, their avatar. For those of you who know Lu, she's an avatar personality here. You can find her on Instagram, you can find her on WhatsApp. To really facilitate their commerce flows on WhatsApp. So that's a good example of how WhatsApp is a complement to an existing distribution channels. And then we have those, like I noted, like a Magi, et cetera, who are building purely onto WhatsApp. What I would say to that is that's a strategic decision for any company. There certainly are a number of APIs, and so what we see is how can businesses either leverage third-party API integrations to connect to inventory management, CRM management, et cetera, and or themselves perhaps become tech providers. We see a lot of startups in the region that are themselves tech providers, building out solutions really to scale across small businesses. And so, again, it's a strategic decision, but there are multiple ways to think about it. What I would say is it absolutely is becoming a distribution platform to build a business on and to reduce costs and to reach just, really the population of Latin America.
Tallis, I'm curious to get your take on this as well. When we think about small businesses adopting technology and adopting AI in Latin America, a lot of that right now is changing quite quickly. When you think about the experience that you've had working with these kind of mid-market businesses through G4 Educação, how do you see them adopting technology? How fast has that been? What have been kind of the biggest bottlenecks? Love for you to share more of that with the audience too.
Well, AI adoption has been so far, since I've been working in tech in the last 14 years, the fastest wave I've ever seen in tech in Brazil. I think across every world, right? What we're seeing right now, it's not a wave, it's a flood. So we work throughout the 75,000 companies in Brazil. Those are medium companies. And what we saw is that the edge right now is not awareness. It's actually the challenge is execution. So most of the founders, they are aware how important it is AI. And most of the founders are already with AI in the agenda, but they don't know how to operationalize this. And what we do in G4, we fill this gap. We teach them how to use AI, not as a tech company to build agent or to use this as just ChatGPT. It's a different way to use Google. What we do is teaching those SMBs to use AI to basically improve contribution margin. And we saw this in our businesses. In the last 12 months, we had actually 18 months. we had improved 7 points percentile in our contribution margin, basically rebuilding most of our processes using AI. And we're teaching that to our customers as well. I mean, let me pull data here, because I think that's gonna give you guys a little bit more color. Nowadays in G4, 50% of all sales leads are fully managed by AI, from qualification to meeting scheduling. Also, 34% of all support tickets are handled entirely by AI in G4 already. Every executive is using AI to do meet prep, which basically made us do something like $2 million in incremental monthly revenue by using that. And almost a third of our code base is written by AI. And we are building at home an AI-driven ATS to help us match candidates by cultural fit that we're gonna provide the solutions for our customers as well. Because education for us, it's basically acquisition channel to have the right ICP at room, and then we can sell solution for them, like software, services, and so on. So I'm gonna give you guys this insight because I have talked with, personally, with more than 6,000 entrepreneurs, owners of small and medium businesses in Brazil in the last 6 years, since we founded G4 in 2019. Those entrepreneurs, they need help to learn how to fill the gap that they have between them and the large corporations. And I think that the transformation that AI is doing in the market right now is the largest transformation that a human being has saw since the electricity. Why? A small entrepreneur that just started in Pará has the same edge to produce value to the customer that maybe Votorantim or Itaú has right now. Because the edge that large company used to have is basically money, access, and human capital, right? Me and my team, we built the marketplace, which is basically nowadays 1/3 of my revenue. And we built this on March using AI, and cost us only 12 hours. So back then, the main advantage that founders used to have is ability to attract capital and attract business developers, right? Or maybe just software coders. There is no edge on this anymore. So I really believe that if you want to drive Brazil to be one of the top countries in the sense of developing new solutions in AI, we are able to do that because the Brazilians are creatives. The only thing that they need now is to be advised in how to operate these new tools to fill the gaps between them and large companies.
Matheus, how is that different when you think about large enterprise clients? So I think we've talked a little bit here about tools that are really catalyzing adoption for consumers and SMBs. And when we think about different technology waves, we always see enterprises taking a little bit longer to adopt that technology and to reinvent themselves. You're working with some of the largest companies in Brazil across different sectors and helping them kind of build very complex workflows using AI. What have you noticed about kind of the pace of adoption for them? What have been kind of the biggest bottlenecks? How fast do you think this is moving inside large enterprises here in Brazil?
Yeah. Let me start off by saying thank you to Ana, our host, and to the Milken Institute for having me. I started off Enter 2 years ago while I was getting my MBA at Stanford. And I dropped out from my MBA to come back to Brazil because I thought Brazil could be at the centerpiece of the AI revolution. And for the past 2 years, we've proven just that. Never in Brazilian history has a company achieved so many enterprise customers from basically being started, and in 2 years having about 30 enterprise clients. And I think that we're very proud that some global companies such as Airbnb, LATAM Airlines have with Enter their premier AI use case globally speaking in terms of return on investment and how AI is actually having an impact in the business as a whole, despite being global companies. So I think the large enterprises, they're going in the right direction. they're adopting AI faster than they adopted software in the previous technological revolution, faster than they adopted mobile. Look at the incumbent banks, how Nubank had a big head start as a result of joining mobile and having the largest incumbents take several years to participate. And I think when you're working with large enterprises, you face three issues, which are the three big topics that are on our minds at Enter whenever we're trying to move a large enterprise in the direction of AI. The first complexity has to do with an organizational, navigating a large organization. We, for example, sell a solution to the legal department that has to be approved by the privacy department, and it has to be integrated with the IT team. In other words, it's almost like a Game of Thrones process inside every enterprise. You need to have the alignment of the C-level, of the managers, the directors. So there's an organizational challenge, which is why we hire significantly from consulting companies, because we need to push the machinery forward. I think the second complexity has to do with being conservative with the adoption of AI. Now, the word I hate the most as an enterprise AI founder is the expression, a small pilot. Let's try this out with a small pilot. Let's try maybe 100 cases, maybe 2% of my database of lawsuits with Enter. Would that work? And well, we did accept that when we were starting, but being conservative kills the momentum of the AI adoption. We had to, let's say, pay that toll when the company was starting. And I think that a year later, once you get credibility, you can really require a more significant share of wallet and spend, but definitely a conservative approach towards AI, is a big risk. And I always speak to clients that, sure, innovation has a risk, but what about the risk of staying put and staying in the same place? Now, that's a bigger risk, in my opinion, than driving innovation faster. But it's always a conversation we need to have. The last and third and last complexity has to do with systems integrations. So, for example, for us to draft a great lawsuit answer for Nubank, a client of ours, if somebody is suing Nubank because they were defrauded on their credit card purchases, well, we need access to the credit card statements. We need to listen to customer support calls between the customer and Nubank to understand what's going on and what actually happened. So the complexity here is getting access to all those data points. It's connected in some way to the organizational complexity, but it's mostly an engineering work of security and having API access, building automations. Now that's why a big part of our infrastructure as a team has to do with solutions engineering, getting the data in. It's not an AI challenge, it's an IT/integrations/security challenge. That's the third big hurdle blocking enterprises from adopting AI. So we need to fight three things. We need to fight people being conservative and low share of wallet. We need to fight we also need to fight the organizational complexity and the integrations and security systems process.
I think now we've kind of moved to the evolution of AI going from kind of conversational AI, and then we've seen the evolution on the models going from like multimodal reasoning, and now to these types of agentic workflows that really can take on and make decisions on very complex problems. And Carlos, I would love to hear a little bit from you. So Valor has been investing in financial services for as long as fintech has been around, since the early 2010s here. And I think this is a sector where we're going to see a lot of transformation when we think about AI and its ability to make decisions and manage these complex workflows. When you think from your vantage point as an investor, what do you see as kind of the biggest opportunities that this technology can unlock? And when you think about financial services in the next decade, how does AI play in the evolution, especially here in Brazil?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you, the Milken Institute, for inviting us, Anna for moderating the panel, doing an amazing job and sending us questions beforehand so we can be more prepared. Thank you for serving lunch at this time so we get fewer questions, and obviously my colleagues here on stage. So I think we are absolutely passionate about technology. If you go back 200-300 years in time, I think most of the global growth happened in this time horizon because of technology. It came in different shapes and forms, the canals, the railroads, highways, and multiple other waves. And we do see AI as one of these next major big waves, perhaps the super cycle of all super cycles, right? I think there is a lot of things that we still don't know yet, and we're spending a lot of time on, but we do have some very strong hypotheses, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you go back 20, 30 years in time, and if you think about the major technological revolutions that happened with social and mobile and search, usually you do see a very deep tech shift, and then you see a very deep distribution shift, right? Meta, Facebook, 20 years ago, had fewer users than High5 and Friendster and MySpace, and then they cracked distribution so strongly that they became what they became, right? The internet came in the early 90s, and then Google started 5 years later, right? And people were on Netscape and Yahoo. And the reason why Google became what became because they cracked distribution, right? And then same thing with mobile, right? Probably a lot of you remember here that when the mobile revolution started, people didn't talk much about Apple, right? People used Blackberries and Nokia, and then the App Store became a massive distribution shift. The reason why I'm providing a little bit of context is because on all these major changes, I think distribution happened because there was a huge level of engagement, and people could understand very well where mode would come from, with the social graph, with aggregating the world's information and a bunch of other stuff. But now we have context and memory, right? I'm only saying this because we might see the most profound change in society and the economy, and that's because of AI, right? When you translate that into agentic payments that Anna was mentioning, in the past 25 years, the internet was really built for humans, right? What's the user experience? What's the user interface? When each one of us open the app, and then you see the website, right? How is the graph displayed? How is the database consolidated and stuff? Maybe in the future, the internet needs to be perfectly built for agents, right? The agent's not going to open the websites and want to see the same things that we do, right? They just want to pay to agents, right? And that's changing very rapidly. And the reason why we love financial services is because we truly believe that financial services is a way to connect and empower some of these regulations and technological shifts as well. We invested in Stone super early, CloudWalk, Coinbase, Circle, USDC, but also invested in other distribution platforms such as Perplexity, that I hope a lot of you use. But think about Perplexity, right? It's not that Perplexity gives you 10 answers and then you go figure it out for yourself. You have one specific answer with a lot of context. If you haven't used Comet, the AI browser, it's wonderful. ChatGPT is going the same way, and several other platforms are going the same way. But in the future, the agent's going to pay the agent, right? If you use traditional Rails, not only pay a transaction fee on a percentage base, but also pay on a dollar base, right? But it's just very hard for the agents to interact in a low-cost manner, and I think payments are going to be fundamentally changed globally. A lot of people have been experimenting with the way agents talk to each other. Probably all of you are aware of what Anthropic has built with MCPs, right? It's a model, it's a context protocol, doesn't have memory yet, but you need a payment stack on top of it, right? A lot of people globally are trying to implement this. One of our previous portfolio companies, it's called Coinbase, developed something that's called the X402, which is a protocol essentially that enable agents to pay with agents at a much, much lower cost, right? But now think about all the business models that can be enabled by it, right? Let's say you want to find a little bit about energy infrastructure in AI. You know what? There was an amazing article at the Financial Times. You want to pay for that particular article, right? How much does it cost? 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents? You're a creator. You have your blog that costs $20 a month, but someone wants to read just one article, right? What happens? If you pay the traditional Rails, there will be no economics on that, right? But if you pay through X402 on top of MCPs and the cost of transactions is very low, maybe that's going to be something highly, highly successful. And then in Brazil, obviously, there is a lot of local context, especially with the PIX roadmap and with Open Finance. But that's where we spend crazy amount of time because we're seeing these two platform shifts at the same time, AI, tech, and distribution, but also blockchain-based stable coins, not only in US-backed securities, but also in several other currencies. But I think we might see something that creates several winners and hundreds of billions of dollars, and trillions of dollars actually of equity value. Hope we're on the right side of it, but what I can say is that a lot of things that we don't know, but a lot of study happening right now, but we think it's going to be something very, very profound.
I'd love to take that segue to talk a little bit about trust and reliability. I think if you as a user has experienced something that feels like an agentic experience or an agentic payment, so if I'm planning a trip on Perplexity and Perplexity is transacting on my behalf, part of it is the product experience, but as we get into more complex decisions, a big part of it is that me as a user, I need to trust that Perplexity can transact on my behalf and that that technology is secure and reliable. And I'd love for this to be a debate with everyone, because I know every one of you have thought about this in the context of your own businesses. But when we think about creating trust with the user, and that user may be a consumer for Meta, that user may be a small business for G4, or an enterprise for Enter, what have been the lessons learned in creating AI that is reliable, that is secure, that is trustworthy for all of you?
I mean, I can start there. I think there's trust and there's transparency, and the two go hand in hand, and they're both really critical. And so, at Meta, we invest significant amount of time and resources thinking about how this can be modeled. I think we started with large language models with our open source Llama, and we spend an inordinate amount of time red teaming, ensuring that answers to prompts are safe, that they're appropriate. We have technology in place so that even when a prompt is issued on our open source, that even in that instant before the response is returned to the user, it is going through a filter to ensure this kind of trust and safety parameters. And so that is very critical in terms of content in open sourcing and how that gets reviewed on before the user ever sees it. So that's one area. The other area, just as an example, is the transparency to customers. And this is going to, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, like how do you know where content is coming from? And so what we are looking at is we've just launched, again on WhatsApp, the WhatsApp agents, AI agents, on our small business platform to enable small businesses around the world to be able to build on WhatsApp. And so you'll note with our agentic solutions, we've just launched this in Mexico, actually, the first country in the world where we've launched this. The response that the business AI agent gives to a user has a tag on it, an AI tag. And so we want to have that transparency with people so they know it's coming from an agent and they can understand just that process. And I think that'll be very interesting to see how content and how responses and how agentic responses especially evolve in the next year or so.
Yeah, my take on that is that seeing by the lens of my clients, the small and medium businesses, what I realized at the next couple of years is that the old world was about who owns the algorithm. And nowadays, the new world, the AI world, is the ones who holds the relationship with the customers, the relationship with the end game customers, those small and medium companies. They have a great edge for the market. Because at the end of the day, like if a company wants to enter in Brazil, I mean, G4 would be one of the best solutions that they have to distribute the softwares or the services that they want to sell in Brazil. Because at the end of the day, my customers, they trust me. So they trust G4. They see G4 as a trusted advisor. So we test solution for them. We negotiate better price for them. That's why some of the names of the markets are calling us the Mercado Livre, the eBay for corporate solutions. Because we've done this. Since the beginning of this year, we tested this thesis, and that works. And at the end of the day, when I talk to my customers, what they're asking me is, say, hey, I need to scale my business, so I need a CRM. Which CRM should I buy? And we know by a fact that there is no, just one solution for everyone. So there is one solution for industry, other solutions for tech companies, and we test those solutions, and we onboard them on our marketplace, and we actually hold the relationship with these customers. So at the end of the day, in the running for gold, what I want to do is that I want to sell shovels, right? And I think that we got to think deeply about it. I know there are many venture capital and funds over here, not just venture capital, but other kind of funds. Guys, you guys that have invested heavily in SaaS in the last couple of years, I mean, you got to look into that, because those who holds the distribution and the trustworth, the brand, holds the power in the AI area. Like everyone with smart guys can, in a room, build solutions and copy solutions that are very complex and very expensive to build. And I think that maybe one of the things that we must do right now, at least us as G4 we are doing, is teaching our customers how to use those solutions in order to scale the business and mostly to increase capacity of generate cash flow. Because at the end of the day, in a country like Brazil with high income tax, it's more important than access to capital, that is almost none in Brazil, is the capacity to generate cash flow so they can invest in other things and mostly generate jobs. I mean, the number that I'm most proud of is the number of jobs that G4 has generated in the last couple of years. So we saw that we helped our customers generate over 756,000 jobs, and our reach is to generate 1 million jobs by the end of the decade. And I think that we're going to reach this number next year. Guys, that's transformative for a third world country like Brazil, and I think that's a great opportunity for everyone that wants to work in a big continental country like ourselves.
Madam, maybe.
Should I jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
You can jump in.
I think I love, one of our customers spoke at our annual event a week ago, and I loved what they said. They said, well, the AI gets things wrong 5% of the time. That's amazing, because the human without the AI gets it wrong 3 times more. Yeah. So for us, in the enterprise world, there is 0 margin of error, especially if you're using AI to draft an appeal that's actually going to court. So the way we've handled security has basically to do with one word, which are evals. So evaluators, they can be human evaluators, and they can be AI evaluators. So I think the way to look at this problem is we can't file the wrong petition, we can't make a mistake, we can't afford to have one of our customers exposed with, let's say, a draft that was miswritten or pointed out the wrong evidence or cited the wrong precedent. And so we have layers of evaluation based on how the first AI eval attributes a level of risk of hallucination. So that determines from a network of human evaluators if we're going to share that with deep experts, or if we're going to share the revision with a low-level reviewer. In other words, I think we need to combine AI with a network of people that are highly capable and able to review content whenever it's sensitive. And this has to do with everything that goes to court. But a big part of legal work also is reporting, internal reporting, and drafting internal opinions. So that part is less sensitive. So the threshold of quality for it to trigger a human revision is higher. Basically, we're going to review less because the AI is already trustworthy, and maybe the AI evals are enough. We don't need to trigger human reviewers. So in other words, the two things have to work hand in hand. Number one, the development of the models and the development of a network that's going to give feedback and improve the models. Now you have 3 or 4 companies, I think Atlantico has invested in one of them, that are only focused on hiring these networks of experts. Meta bought Scale AI, for example, recently. That's exactly their business. You have Mercor growing in the US. You have a few companies doing that in Brazil. So it's about in the AI world, the picks and shovels are GPUs. The picks and shovels are basically the engineers that can train models. but they're also experts that can be the right reviewers for the right task. And having that network is part of building a great AI company anywhere in the world.
I know we only have 4 minutes here, and I have 100 more questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a little bit of a catch-all. I think when I think about the biggest kind of secular opportunity for us as a country and as a region is really we can position ourselves within the global economy in a way that we have not done before, and as a true kind of driver for AI. And I think this spans regulation, which I know, Mateus, you have been very active and involved in. That spans energy, which I know Maren and Tallis, you have both talked about in the context of Brazil as a country, but also globally, how you make sure that this infrastructure is being built sustainably. And it spans capital markets, which plays a huge role in driving that technology forward here. So when you think about the next 5 years, all of you, what do you think needs to happen for Brazil and Latin America to be well-positioned and at the center of this new kind of AI-driven economy?
That's right.
Yeah, I think we need a lot of things. But I think one good way to think about it is, you're totally right, Anna. It's a massive value chain, right? Start with, you need a lot of energy, and then you need the chips, and then you need the data centers, and then you need the foundational models, and then you need all the software architecture, vector databases, orchestration, protocols, etc. And then you have the massive application layer, right? Again, you go back to the last few major waves, there is hundreds of companies with billion-dollar plus in revenues. They were created once the infrastructure was created with AWS and Google and the social platform, secure data, etc. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of activity. If you think about the value chain, I think energy is one space where Brazil has obviously a very, very clear differentiation, but that requires a lot of efforts from the private sector, from the public sector. Just another day, I saw a stat that was kind of shocking, which is in 1970s, the US 60s-ish, the US opened its first nuclear power plant. You fast forward to today, there is probably 50, 55. There was no power plants in China 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and now there's also 55 and 30 under construction, right? So the scale of it is a massive orchestration between private sector and public sector, especially because in these deep levels, you also require a lot of capital, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about the economics of data centers, and Brazil has a clear advantage given the energy edge, like it's in single digits, right? So return on invested capital for these products is something to consider in a high cost of capital environment. So I think Brazil has to think about it in a very strong manner. Now, when you go to the layer of application, I think that's where we believe that Brazil can export a lot of innovation. We talk a lot about financial services, but one of our companies, CloudWalk, we invested many, many years ago, almost pre-revenue, amazing team. This company is doing $1.2 billion in revenue, growing 100% every year, expanding globally. And quite frankly, we talk to investors in Asia and the Middle East, and people, okay, but what's about the tech stack, right? How come that this company has $1.5 million in revenue per employee, almost 2x what Palantir has, right? What's the secret behind this company? And I think it's a lot of combination, a lot of things, but also AI. That's when we're going to export. I think legal, for sure, is one area where Brazil has a lot of space to be better and to improve. Accounting, healthcare, but I think financial services is one area where we can export. But I think my final words here are, this is a massive, complex, very deep value chain where all of us have a part to play, and the private and the public sector, because the 5 years will change a lot, but we think more like how will the next 100 years look like? How will the next 200 years look like, right? And I think it's almost like a national project that needs to be thought through. And it's good that I get to discuss these things with people like you, that I know lots of people, like founders, investors, private-public sector, because I think this should be on the agenda. It's very, very important for sure.
I have only one thing to add on that. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but Brazil holds 1/4 of the world's reserve for rare earth. And different from China and US that are other two big holders of rare earth, our soil is sit on clay, which make our mining much more cleaner and greener than any other process in the world. Like in China, you have to use acids to do the mining. In Brazil, we don't need to do it. The absorption of the soil is much easier. But more than that, more than just rare earth, over 75% of an energetic matrix is clean hydro, soil, solar, wind, and we have plenty of space for data center. I would say that Brazil is the place to invest in the next decade if you don't want to lose the opportunity, this cycle of opportunity of AI adoption. Because AI needs rare earth, needs energy, and needs data center. And Brazil can hold your investment for all of this. Look at my country, not just a raw material exporter, but actually as a platform to be the solution for this next cycle, AI cycle globally. Trust in the Brazilians. We are hard workers. We are creative people. And we do have the resource to fund this next generation cycle of AI.
I'm going to give a little more global perspective. Certainly the adoption rates of AI here in Brazil are unbelievable. But let me take it back, just given this audience in the room, and just talk about how AI can serve in climate. So I'll give a couple examples from the perspective of a large company, but also what AI is doing that you may want to think about for your own companies or as you address the ecosystem that you're investing in. So, of course, on one hand, in AI, yes, we need to look at emissions and data infrastructure, et cetera. And so that is certainly one part of the value chain. You know, Meta has been net zero emissions for our own use since 2020. We're now looking at the entire supply chain. We hope to be net zero by 2030 and water positive by 2030. So what does that mean now when we're facing AI and all of energy consumption, et cetera? We have a foundation. It's called the Foundation for AI Research, and they've partnered with Meta Infrastructure, and they've leveraged AI and large language models with our Llama open source to come up with a way to create low carbon cement. Now, this is something that would have taken us hours and hours, and you can imagine the amount of research that this was taken, shortened and compressed because of AI modeling. And now that because it's open source, this is a code that is available to anyone, to any company that wants to use it to generate their own low-carbon cement, right? So we're already building data centers with this low-carbon cement. So think about what AI can do to really advance the time and the resources that it takes to come up with these kinds of solutions. Another kind of solution, we partner, again, using our Llama open source with the World Resources Institute, and we've created a program here in Brazil called Every Tree Counts. What is it? It's a way to, using AI, measure canopy growth in reforestation. And so we're able to much more accurately, through these models, understand and get the data on how over time trees are growing, how reforestation is proceeding, if it's not, et cetera. So you can imagine all of this that are being used now in kind of, carbon credits, et cetera, optimization, to be able to truly attribute on a much more accurate scale and with much fewer resources, areas that we want to be able to, all of us, we, not just me and Meta, but all of us want to be able to advance, right? And so these are the kinds of tools that when you think about AI, yes, from a finance perspective, you've heard a lot about how AI can be used in finance, but when you think about the ecosystem and what needs to be true for many of these projects that you're looking at to advance, you really want those projects to be incorporating AI because it is going to just advance the ability to, again, more accurately measure, more quickly advance and implement these projects that are just so critical, I think, to all of us in this room.
Mateo, some final words to bring us home?
Yeah, I think to wrap up, I'd share a different perspective, which has to do with one word, talent. There's two people at Enter. One is called Breno, the other is called Guilherme. So Guilherme went to Polytechnique in France, one of the best engineering schools in the world, was working at Microsoft. Breno went to Harvard Business School, was working at Amazon. For me, the one thing that can put Brazil on the global landscape of AI is talent. And that is where I dedicate a third, maybe half of my time, is basically getting the best people in the world to join the company. It's only possible if you have capital. So we at Enter, we've been very focused on putting Brazil in the Silicon Valley map. Whenever people think about AI, they do think about Brazil because of Enter. We need to make sure that that's not a company, it's a movement. So we have other companies that are doing the same. And that way we have the capital to compete for talent. We can pay high salaries and bring the best to Brazil. So we brought Guilherme and Breno from Amazon in the US, from Microsoft in France, back to work here in São Paulo, a mile from where we are. And that's revolutionary. I think apart from capital, we need to make sure regulation stays out of the way. So Brazil there's a piece of legislation in Congress that passed the Senate and is in the House, being voted in the House right now. And we need to make sure that it's far better and far more pro-entrepreneurship than it is today, because the initial draft was inspired in the European AI regulation. Now, I've never heard of any big AI breakthrough coming from Europe, so I'm not sure why we're going in that direction. That's something that China and the US have in common, which is betting on AI, making sure that it's a national priority as opposed to making it harder for it to be developed. Now, I'll just give one example of how that regulation hurts Breno and Guilherme, who chose to come back to Brazil. Well, it forces any high-impact algorithm, AI algorithm, to go through. High impact is defined pretty broadly. It's basically any algorithm that can impact thousands of people. It doesn't need to be millions. And it needs to go through an approval process by a government agency. That doesn't make any sense. It's almost like a censorship, previous censorship. So that's, we need capital. We need to have the best venture capital funds in the world betting on Brazil. We've raised money from Sequoia Capital, from Founders Fund, and we need to make sure that continues. We need to make sure that regulation is going in the right direction. And lastly, we need folks that are willing to really build the application steps and then bring it globally, because I think building a global company from Brazil is what's going to lay the groundwork for the next generation, which is what David at Nubank did for us and what we hopefully want to do for the next generation. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. I hope this has been inspiring for you, and thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure.